Hello, this is Robbie Catherine Anthony with FireDev Technology. Today we're looking at the Potlach Fund website. What the purpose of this video is just to kind of serve as a general overview in terms of making changes to the site itself. If you've ever used WordPress, a lot of this will be familiar, but in case you haven't, this should be able to give you the tools to be able to confidently make changes. We do have a couple interesting things going on here due to themes and plugins, but ideally, we'll be able to have a pretty thorough understanding of how the site works at the end of this tutorial. As always, if there's any questions or anything that we'd like to go in more depth on, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to create additional tutorials or add in new features to the website. But without further ado, we'll start here. So this is assuming that we've already logged in. So generally the way you do that is you'll go to the website and we'll change the URL to actually match the new website, but you'll type in /WP admin and you'll have a set of login credentials, generally an email address and a password. And I will send you a separate email with those login credentials so you can start messing around, and I'll even show you how to create more login credentials for individuals that might be wanting to access or change the site. So the first thing that kind of catches our eyes is different is that we've got this kind of charcoal bar at the top of the website. This is only visible for users that are logged in, so no one's actually seeing this unless they're logged into the site. So we can do a couple things. Well, we've got some quick edit tools here. We can edit the page, we can add in new information, we can review comments if there's comments turned on for certain pages or posts. We can customize, but generally speaking, the easiest thing to do is just go to this thing right here, the little kind of dash icon, and then click on that. And what that's doing is that's taking us to what is known in the industry as the back end of the website. So if you hear people talking about, well, you need to go to the back end or whatever it is, this is what is being referenced. And this is really where we can pull all the levers and switches in terms of editing the website. So this first section is just kind of an overview of the site itself. WordPress likes to shoe in a little of their own events, things like that. We can modify this to better suit your needs if there's some information that we'd constantly want to be displaying to people who are editing the whether but generally speaking, most people just leave it alone. The next area is we have updates. So this is where kind of WordPress will collect all the different updates, whether it's a theme or a plugin or WordPress itself. Generally speaking, I do not update plugins or anything. I just kind of try to ignore that little number there. Using that proverbial, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The reason to stay away from updates at times is because sometimes the code in those different components will change and it will inadvertently break the site. So I would just do your best to ignore them. If something does need to be changed or updated, that's going to be where we're looking at first, but I would save updating the site for a developer or someone who really knows their way around WordPress. The next five areas here is really the heart of the website. So we've got posts, media, forms, pages, and comments. So some of them are self-explanatory, some of them are not. We'll start with posts. This is a blog post. So if you do create a blog, this is where you go in. We've got some sample content in here and we'll end up removing it sooner than later before we go live. But as you can see, we can see all the articles here. We can hit edit. And what this is going to pull up is a text editor. So it's very much like you'd expect in terms of a word processor. So you just kind of type and what you see is what you get. So we've got tools in here where we can bold, we can bold, italicize, add in hyperlinks, do a few other things. But this is kind of our way to create content. We've got our text sizes over here. We've got color settings, really a lot of additional functionality here that you can really create something unique for every post. So here we can preview it before we actually save our changes. So we can hit preview. It's going to pull up that blog post and it's going to show us what it looks like. And so here it's showing us a comment on it. We can reply to it. We can remove it. We can add categories so people can search content just by the broader category, whether it's a cause or a past event. We can also add in specific tags. Tags are things that help a search engine figure out what kind of information is there. So if we're talking about an upcoming event, it might be a good idea to add in the name of the event in the tags. We've got other items like the featured image, so that's just the main image that'll be featured. We can also add images in here by hitting return, and we can add a block. And so here we see a couple pre-selected options like adding text, adding a gallery, or adding some other items like a file or a cover. So a little bit of it is just going to be experimentation. This is a new version of WordPress. This is 5.0, and they kind of changed this interface, but it is still very much the same. Type in the text you want, hit that big old blue button to update, and then see the results. So briefly, that is posts. And as you can see in the subsection, we got 4 different options. We can view all the posts, we can add new ones, we can kind of look through all of our categories and tags for organizational purposes. Again, some of the stuff you may not ever use, but it's there if you need. The next section is we have our media library. And so what we can do is this is one way to browse all the different content on the website, whether it's a photo or a PDF or a video. This is a good way to kind of browse that. And so when we're creating posts or pages, we need to upload it to the media library. And there's a few different ways to upload media to the website, but this is kind of the simplest way that you go in here, you click add new, and it's going to pull up a screen where you can either drop the files or you can go to your desktop and select them, but it'll upload them all, and then we can see them in the library. The next section is forms, which, as you may have guessed, is for forms, specifically contact forms. The plugin being utilized here is Gravity Forms. Not particularly useful to know, but that is what it is. So we've got, looks like we got to re-enter in our license key there. And looks like I just need to go through the quick little configuration. Looks like we're installing. So if you want to create a contact form, such as contact us, or if there was a specific event and you just wanted to have the responses routed to a particular someone, it might be a good idea to create an entirely new form. So we can go ahead and do this. As you can see, the interface here is pretty friendly. It's just indicating that we can just drag and drop forms. We can add in single text, things like, people will be able to type in their name. We can add in radio buttons for different options. And we can just kind of go down these different sections to really create pretty robust contact forms. In our settings here, we are able to adjust how the form works, what's the description, the alignment of it, save and continue functionality, as well as notifications, who's actually going to get the email when someone completes this form. And then confirmations, whether we send an email back to the person that filled out the form to let them know we got their message. Again, I can handle creating these if it's easier. But if once you have created forms, you can go in here, you can see that the form is there, you can edit it, and it's pretty similar to a post. WordPress likes to repeat how it lays out information, so it's easy to kind of switch between activities. And then here we can also see the entries. So if we do have a contact form and it came by email but got deleted or something like that, we can always go back into the website and click on entries and see who filled out the form and the information that they provided as dictated by the form. The next area we have is the pages, and this is probably where y'all are going to spend most of your time, just because this is really what the website is at this point. So we can see all of our pages are laid out here. It goes alphabetically. We've got a search function if we'd like. But let's go ahead and look at the community building page. So we go ahead and click edit on it. And we are going to see kind of the page laid out in this kind of editing style. So we've got our big old featured image right there. When people are just learning WordPress, sometimes it's helpful to have the page pulled up next to you or in a different tab. So you can kind of start going back and forth and saying, okay, if I put an image here, the featured image, it's going to show up right here. And you start making that association of where information goes. But just like the post editor, we can go down, we can just type in new information as we see fit. We can keep scrolling down, we can change the featured image alignment. So if we want it to be a full image, if we want it kind of snap to the right side or the left, these are our options here. And that is that. So friendly reminder, just because it's easy to forget, no changes will be made unless we hit update. So definitely be sure to hit update if you're ready to make changes. If you made a change that you don't want, feel free to just exit the page, and that works just as fine. If you do get to a point where you made an update or you deleted something accidentally and you didn't mean to hit the big blue button, you can always go here to the publish and click on that. And, excuse me, we can go down to revisions. That's what I was looking for. And what this will do is it'll pull up a screen where we can go back and forth between the former edits, and ensure that if there was an error, we can go back and revert it to its original state. So generally it's wise to not hit the update button unless you really want to save that change. But if there is an error, you are more than welcome to browse the revisions and try to recover that content. We have a comments section. So for posts, typically blog posts, WordPress's embedded functionality is to allow people to comment on things. You can manage and kind of moderate comments here, so you can unapprove things, you can spam them, you can trash them, and just remove them from the site. I don't see a ton of instances in which you all will be using comments, but if you do end up firing up a blog, or you do want to have that next kind of level of engagement for the people that are viewing the site, this is where you moderate that information. So kind of below this area, this is where you generally don't want to spend a lot of time. The appearances is something that we'll touch on, but we'll come back to that because that is an important section. But this section is the plugin section. So it's just kind of like small snippets of code that we added into the website to grant additional functionality. So the form, the contact form, that is a plugin. As I said before, it's usually just wise to let these keep going. Don't worry about updating. And if something does require an update, we'll figure it out pretty fast because it'll break the site. But if everything's working and nothing is, if it's all working as expected, don't worry about updating. Users is a good area to be able to have an understanding of if you are an administrator of the site. So if you're someone that is using kind of that top level permission. Here we can add in a new user, so we can create the username, we'll add in their email, first name, last name. We'll set their role. So different roles can do different things, subscriber being the lowest role, administrator being the highest role. If it were me, I would just make everyone who's going to edit the site an administrator, just because there isn't a ton of difference between these two, and you can add in another layer of management. And so once you do go through this, we've got this box pre-checked off to send the new user an email about their account. They'll get an email and they'll learn how to log into the site. To log into the site, that email that allows people to log into the site sometimes goes to the junk folder or the spam folder. So feel free to let people know that when you do add them as a user, inform them that they should check their junk folder. This section down here, tools, this is mostly just kind of developer stuff, things like exporting data and importing new data. I really wouldn't mess around with any of these sections if I were you. We've got the settings, so this is kind of more of our kind of top level areas where we've got things like the site title and the tagline. We can change the domain, the email address that is going to be the administrator, things like that. Again, these are all settings that you can tweak. I don't think you will. And generally you won't break anything if you're messing around here, except for this area. If this box is, for me, it's grayed out, but if you log in and for some reason it isn't grayed out, do not change this because it can really, really mess things up. But other than that, you can change all these settings. It doesn't totally matter. And the same can be said about just most everything down here. One of the ones that you don't want to mess with is the permalink structure. This just changes how the links are created. So if you kind of on the fly switch between them, it can break the navigation for your site. So if we do ever want to change out how these links are laid out and kind of go to just like a more cleaner URL, just let me know and I'd love to take care of that to ensure that it's done in a way that it doesn't mess up the site. These last two ones, they're just plugins. So they are just, this one's a little security one. It kind of gives us a change log to tell us all the work that's been done. As you can see, there's a number of entries from my activities on the site. But if you ever needed to audit and try to figure out like who changed what, this area is going to tell you exactly what happened where. And then I think this is just installed by the hosting provider. They're like little video tutorials. Yeah, look at that. If you find this tutorial insufficient or would like just kind of a different take on it, they've got a just wealth of resources down here in terms of really how to make the most of the WordPress site. So I'm trying to give you the top level perspective of how to change the content and the things I think you'll need most. But you can go down here to the bottom and just kind of browse through things and learn up a little bit more on the platform if you so choose. So our last stop will be in the appearance section. This is a little bit of a trickier section just because you can really fundamentally change things about the site, and it's somewhat easy to do. We're going to focus on the three sections that you will probably be spending time in at one point or another. That is customize, widgets, and menus. I would not mess around with the theme section. I'll do my best to kind of clean it out to make sure that even if someone does go in there, they can't inadvertently flip a switch that would break something. But generally you don't need to be in the themes. The background, I think that's just to install like a background image or something. Quite honestly, I never use it, and I would recommend neither do you. And then we have the theme editor. So this is where you can actually change some of the code that is in the site. It should give you a little warning, and sometimes it doesn't. It looks like I overwrote it for my account. But this is where you can go in and start changing the hundreds of lines of, really thousands of lines of codes that power the site. And just throwing in the wrong like keystroke accidentally or something like that can break the site. So generally speaking, if you're not a developer, you really shouldn't be messing around in here. And if you do wander in there, just feel free to click back. So going back to these different sections, let's start with the customize. That's going to be an area that just by the nature of how the site works, you're going to spend some time in. So we have an opportunity here to swap out the logo. So if you ever change the logo, that's where you do it. Changing the title of the site, the favicon or the site icon, that's pretty easy. We can change things like kind of the general like color, like if we wanted to go to that yellow or that black, this is the area in which we do it. And what's kind of nice about this area is that it will generally update in real time. It won't actually save the changes until you hit that blue button, but it will show you kind of what the changes you're about to make. So here we can change the font style. So let's say we want to change it to this type of font. As you can see, it's kind of reloading to show us what it would look like if we switched around these options. But we're not going to do that. So we'll go back to the one that we originally selected. The area that you might be interested in working on a bit is your kind of home sections here. So here, first we've got the homepage settings. This I wouldn't totally worry about. If you do ever set up a blog, we'll use this section to tell WordPress where the blog is. Here we have the sliders. So this area up here, these are kind of our options to change it up. So one is that we've got the number of slides, so we could increase this from decrease it from 3 to 2 to 1. And what this slider is doing, the way it works is that it's using pages. So going back, thinking about the dashboard here, it's going back to these pages and it's using that content to kind of pipe that information in here. So if we create a page for a specific event, it might be worthwhile to go in here, go to slide 3, and then change it to that specific event page. And we should see this layout preserved, but it would be for that event itself. We've got things like slider properties. So how many words are included from the page before we get that ellipses. We can change kind of the aesthetic of it, a fade in and fade out. We can choose to turn off these arrows. The pager is this 3 kind of dashes down there, and then autoplay. We can turn that off if we'd want. The next section is the activity section. So very much like the slider, we're able to just a few things like turning the system on and off, enabling these black and white thumbnails so we could make it full color. I like the black and white. I think it just aesthetically looks better, and I like that light up effect when you hover over it, but you can turn that off here. We can change how many activities that we have in this section, so we can drop it from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And then we can also, again, change the word count before we have this ellipses. So we could increase it to maybe 40 or so, and we'll see more text. Down here, we're selecting the pages that we want for the slider. So here we're just using the About page. Here we're using the Grants page, Training and Events. And so we can just easily click on these. It's going to show us all of our pages, and we can tab over to something different if we felt like changing things up. But that's how we do that. And then we have the donate section, so kind of our third section down here. Again, if this seems repetitive, that's kind of the point of WordPress, is that we're keeping the workflow similar. And down here we can select a different page for donate, and it will pipe in that information. And then we can change the link, the URL for the actual donation. So if we ever changed from network to good to a different provider, this would be the area that we did it. And that's really more or less all that you're going to need to know in terms of this section. And then as always, if you want those changes, you have to hit the big blue button. And then here's the last two sections. And excuse me that this video is running a little bit long, but I just wanted to be as comprehensive as I could have been to ensure that we felt confident using the site. So here's the side of the widget section. So when we go to one of those pages, let's specifically look at the Who We Are page. We have this sidebar available in which there is additional information being displayed. And so if we go back to our widgets, we can kind of see how that works. And so here we just added in a search bar. When we click it open, we can modify things in terms of the title of it. We can also add in other things like galleries and images, comments, tag clouds, videos. But this is going to show up on every single page because we haven't changed any of these settings. Whereas this down here, it's the text, it's the staff, the board of directors, and we said we wanted that to only show up on a certain page. And so what we did is we went down here, we checked off show unchecked pages, we went to post types, and we scrolled down, we selected the page that we wanted to display it on. So this information is only going to show on this page by virtue of this, but the search bar will show up on every page because we have not checked off anything to hide it on. So as people continue to update and their own pages, they will have this area, which is controlled by the page section, and then this area, which is controlled by the widgets. Last but not least, we have our menus. Here we have our primary menu. We only have one menu, so this is kind of where everything's at. The way we add additional information is we go through this list, we check it off, and we hit add to menu. We can also search. We can also add in custom links. So if we just wanted to link to a different website, this is our way to do it. But we go in here, we hit add in menu, we'll see it pop at the bottom, and we just drag and drop like that. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then, as I'm sure you're well familiar with at this point, we click the big blue button to save to menu. And that admittedly is a lengthy yet abbreviated tutorial as to how to manage this website. Please let me know if things didn't make sense, if it'd be easier if I could break up different sections, or if there's anything else. Yeah, that's all we got. So, yep, thank you very much.